exposing Playboy has become its own cash cow and its own grift. All of these former Playboy models, the Playmates, have come out with their memoirs. They're producing television shows. Like just a couple of years ago, A&E produced this TV series called The Secrets of Playboy and made money off of that. There's another show coming out that's executive produced by another former Playmate named Holly Madison called The Playboy Murders. And she also put out her own memoir called Down the Rabbit Hole: Curious Adventures and Cautionary Tales of a Former Playboy Bunny. And that was all the way back in 2015 before Hugh Hefner died. And I just saw another interview of Kendra Wilkinson, another former Playmate, who said that she was traumatized. She was controlled and exploited, and she was one of the youngest girls who moved into the mansion. I don't lack sympathy for what they went through, but let's not act like they didn't choose to be there. I mean, this isn't, I feel like they're trying to frame Andrew Tate in the same light as Hugh Hefner. Like, all of these women are choosing to live on a compound in Romania and have an OnlyFans account, and they're claiming that they have been held hostage. When in reality, they're there for the money, and they're there for the fame, and they could leave anytime they wanted to. Same situation for these women. They said, I narrowly escaped the Playboy Mansion. You could have left any time that you wanted to. You went in by choice in this degenerate world, and it's really sad that it's embarrassing that feminism basically convinced women that all of these things that primarily benefit men are things that free them and empower them. Like, yeah, sleep with guys on the first date. Like, that's empowering. And then the male feminists are like, yeah, that's a really good idea. You should be empowered in your sexuality, so you put out for me without committing to you. And selling your body on OnlyFans. All of the male feminists are going to support that. It's so embarrassing what has happened to women, and we're just like this hollow husk of like what a vision of femininity used to be. It's really sad. Like, I do feel bad for them, but I don't think that they're intentionally lying. What they're doing is they're lying to themselves.
I think what it is for a lot of it is back then the idea that men and women would take responsibility for their actions was a lot more prevalent. Nowadays, that you don't have to take responsibility for your own actions. You can decry the person who's dead and can no longer defend themselves and say that this was done to you because there's a market for that. Back in the early 2000s when this culture was prevalent, I don't think it would have gotten the same play. I don't think that these types of stories would have carried the same weight that they do now because the culture has demanded that these types of stories be treated as if they're 110% true. What I see is a world that was actually a lot more equal, at least in how we treated one another.
Thank you.
Just 220s. And it doesn't really matter because now they're doing it to themselves. Like, who will they blame when there's no Hugh Hefner to blame? Are they going to blame the creator of OnlyFans? They're going to have to blame themselves eventually. Yeah. Maybe one day, if the women stay on their path long enough, will actually come to a culture where they take responsibility for their own mistakes.
OrganizedBusinessServices.com said, guys, money is just an illusion. Kim K needs the money and will sell her soul for $1. All Kim K's wealth is rented, not owned. Most of these people you talk about daily are rented. One day with money and next day broke. I don't know if I would agree with that if you're using Kim Kardashian as the example, but I understand what you mean in a larger picture. I don't see the second $20. Is this Crispy Leg Transport LLC? How many of these ladies' free will was taken away by gunpoints?
Yeah, I mean that's the number one thing, right? A lot of this also it's reframing regretful choices you made as being brainwashed, and I don't like that either. I don't like the idea that you can rewrite your own history when the person isn't there to defend themselves. And obviously, Hugh Hefner is a over the top example, but we see a lot of that now. A lot of people want to reframe bad choices they made when they were younger as some type of coercion or something that happened to them, rather than admitting that we live in a society where we make choices for ourselves and they will have repercussions. And it's monetized to do so.
Mm-hmm. And I am definitely of the opinion that most women's level of agency is limited, to say the least.
I don't have sympathy for them, because I actually believe that if the culture we lived in now told them that this wasn't a mistake, they wouldn't believe it was a mistake. I believe if the culture hadn't shifted around the victim narrative, that they wouldn't be looking back at their choices with the same lens that they're looking through now. I think they've been led to these decisions.
It mirrors a lot of these false Me Too claims, though. Like, it's too simple and reductive to just say that all of the Me Too accusers were Machiavellian and they were calculated and they drum up these fake stories that they know full well are fake in order to ruin lives. That definitely has happened and continues to happen, don't get me wrong. But I think more so, a lot of these accusers are lying to themselves and retroactively reinterpreting what happened to them as traumas, or reinterpreting what happened to them as essentially something that happened to them rather than something that they did that they regret. Because it's easier to digest that story, like someone did something to me, rather than confronting and reckoning with the decisions you made. Like, that's far more painful.
Society won't hold them accountable. It's really, really funny, because when you talk about it, you say women have limited agency. People will say one way or the other. Like, some people say base. That's awesome. We'll applaud that statement. The problem is society is telling them that they both have limited agency, but also don't. Like, they're telling them both, you should be 110% your own person. You make all your choices. You're a grown woman, boss, babe. But also, when you make a mistake, it's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. And I reject that. I really do believe that in the early 2000s, when this stuff was going on, we can talk about the degeneracy of it all you want, depending on your level of religious belief or faith in what's going on, and how the relationship between the sexes have changed in the last 10 to 20 years. Depending on that, sure. But I do believe that in that time period in the early 2000s, neither man nor woman would be given as much special quarter as to how to interpret things that happen to them outside of actual physical coordinated crime. Like, there just wouldn't have been the psychological redressing of your own actions as something that happened to you back then. And I think that most people that believe in like a fair, like what the societal idea of fairness is, would have believed that when we looked for equality, not equity, but equality, that's what we were going for. Women now. There's women in government, and my gosh, we almost had a female vice president back there in the early 2000s. All this stuff that was going on, equal rights. People want the equal rights, but what we found is that they don't want the equal they don't want the equal consequences that come from making your own choices.
Sure.
And it was a different time. As trite as that is to say, it was a different time.
Look, I don't buy the narrative that women didn't have agency over their sexuality before the sexual revolution. If you wanted to go sleep with every guy and be a prostitute and, get pregnant out of wedlock, you were perfectly free to do all of those things. The only difference is that back then there was a culture of shame around those maladaptive behaviors. And also, we lived in a more religious society that had a concept of sexual morality. You were equally free to make all of those decisions back then. Now, you are still free to make those decisions, but you will get celebrated for it. And if you regret it later, the media is happy to put a spotlight on you and give you the microphone and tell you that you were a victim.
There's a $20 one there from Mikey.
He said, who will they blame? Just men. It's always going to come down to men are the issue.
I would love to see one of these interviews where the person, who was the one that we listened to where they said, look, I didn't see any of that stuff happen.
Kendra Wilkinson said that she didn't feel like anyone had it out for her or that she was victimized, but she still says that she is traumatized by the experience of living there for 5 years.
But what she's saying is that so it's trauma brought on by her own choices, right? That's what people would like to see a lot. I honestly believe that these books. I think that the idea of somebody writing one of these books and using it as a cautionary tale for younger women would maybe play better, right? Like maybe there would be more of a market for people. Like, how good do these books actually do? Like, we see a new thing about them all the time. Like, I would love to see one of these women be like, look, I made these choices. You can judge Hugh however you want, whether he was a good guy or a bad guy. But at the end of the day, the person you have the most control over is yourself.
Yeah,
Your own choices, your own actions, the decisions you make are the only thing you can 110% control without illegality coming towards you, right? Without the idea of somebody physically coercing you, keeping you somewhere. The number one thing that you have control over is your ability to say yes or no to a question, your ability to do something or not do something.
I think that Kendra Wilkinson's interview in People was the most honest. She said, I got into deep regret afterwards. I got to the point where I started hating myself and asking, why did I have sex with Hugh Hefner? I hated my body.
Why?
I hated my
Yes,
face.
why?
I got to the point where I started hating myself. And, you know, even though she probably never reached an answer for why she did all of these self-destructive things in her early 20s, at least she's asking, why did I do this? Instead of, why did someone do this to me?
Look, I've admitted many times that I'm a dummy, sure, but like, ask yourself this question: Take Hugh Hefner, then clone him. Make Hugh Hefner 2 Electric Boogaloo a plumber with no savings and no money to his name. Would you have sex with that one? He lives in a one-bedroom apartment. If the answer is you'll have sex with the one who has the mansion in the grotto, and you won't have sex with the one who lives in the one-bedroom apartment, you have your answer as to why you chose to do that. I don't think that actually takes a whole ton of introspection.
Number one sent a $20 super chat. Feminism takes over Star Wars and blames the predominantly male audience for valid criticism. To quote Dave Chappelle, chivalry is dead and women killed it. These women be shopping for our IPs. Cheers, champs. They do be shopping for the male-dominated IPs. I guess I'm just disheartened that the consequences of the sexual revolution are smacking us in the face right now, and the conversation isn't evolving past I was a victim of this, you know? Like, why can't we have an honest conversation about the way that the Playboy Mansion contributed to our pornified culture that has victimized more people than ever personally interacted with Hugh Hefner? And why do we have to cast him as the monster and the women who are around him as little babies who I mean, yeah, that's just such a simple narrative that doesn't require us to morally question the new sexual mores that we've accepted.
That's your answer. The answer is that it's simple and it's easily digestible, and that's what the media wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just very sad. Like, I do feel I feel for these women because they clearly are traumatized and mentally ill, and they probably don't have it in them to confront their regrets in life. And they also have a monetary incentive to sell that story.
That brings me to this. After Hugh's passing, it was revealed that Crystal was excluded from his will. But he did not leave her with nothing. In 2013, Hugh bought her a $5 million West Hollywood mansion. Apparently, she also received $7 million in cash. I wonder what the hell the tax implications were on that. The house was built in 1937 and boasts a stunning Mediterranean vibe after it was remodeled. So,
is she still living in that?
I have no idea. But this says Crystal Hefner at the Playboy Mansion. This is a photo not. The mansion I was fitting into someone else's life. I wanted to make sure the house reflects my current life, but also my past. She seemed a lot less upset about it all when there was no book to be sold. Like I said, it's the victimhood to book pipeline that they all end up on. And as adults, as somebody who was also an adult at this time period in the early 2000s, I have very, very little sympathy for choices in which no criminality was actually committed upon. Maybe I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, everyone knows and is a person who made decisions that hurt them in the end. And that's painful. So I feel sympathy for that pain. Like, even self-inflicted pain. Like, I do feel sympathy for that, you know?
Yeah, maybe this is one of those stories where I would be in a more chill.
Not today.
It depends on the day, right? Like, but also that's because this story doesn't resonate with me because I would never be in this situation because I'm not a hot woman. So the idea is that, like, if this was a story about somebody who screwed themselves up with drugs, I can have sympathy while still knowing that you need to take responsibility for your own actions. But that one always gets me because relative to my life experience. So.
Got a $20 from Better the Offender. Accountability and lack of humility is what the modern women is missing. I think you mean humility is missing, but yes. Let's go to Super Chats.
There's another $20 one from Pat the Plumber who says, half the plumber is my uncle. Oh, and somebody said, in my example, somebody said, like, plumbers make bank. But yes, but in my example, that Hefner is bad at his job. So just imagine, like, Hugh Hefner, the plumber, but he's just not really good at his job. He's always late. He doesn't finish the work. Doesn't get paid very well. And then one more here from That's Danzatastic says, on a random note, Mr. Brett, I wanted to get your take on the show The Newsroom. Do you think that show is good? Could it be made today without being so biased? Also, Mary didn't like Buffy. What does Mary even enjoy? I never watched The Newsroom, though I do know what it is. No, if you're talking about a show without bias, probably not possible today.
I didn't care for Buffy, probably a generational thing. But the one episode where Moloch infested the internet was pretty funny because they still were calling the internet the net. And this kid said, if you're not jacked in, you're not live.
Any TV show from the 90s that talked about the internet is a gold mine of content. If you guys never saw, there's an X-Files episode called The Ghost in the Machine about, like, a building that's an artificially intelligent building. And it's so bad that it's good because the building talks like Hal from Mystery Science. It's so good. You have to watch it. All right, let's do Super Chats.
Amelia Cara Mia said, been watching Star Wars Theory for about 5 years now. Dude is a middle-of-the-road Canadian, in no way radical. These articles are trash.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the rest of the fandom is moving in a left direction and leaving people like him behind who are middle of the road and really couldn't care one way or another. They're kind of radicalizing them in the process. Joe Wallen said, so Generations is kind of like the new decades these days.
I guess
so.
Let's do 2 more.
Disco Jensen said, point me to one person that bought Rose Tico or Admiral Holdo merch. No one bought the Reva lightsaber either. There was a Reva lightsaber?
They didn't even make it. Remember, they tried to crowdfund the Reva lightsaber. It didn't make enough money to get made.
Damn.
And yes, plenty of YouTube channels covered the amazing overflow of, like, back stock of unbought Star Wars toys that nobody had any interest in purchasing.
I know that kids these days aren't into Star Wars, right? There aren't any children who are into Star Wars.
They make the toys for them.
They're making the toys for the Disney adults. The kids aren't playing with the toys. Corey Anderson said, how are dinosaurs not real, Mary?
Want to tell them, Mary?
They're just not real. I just don't buy it.
We had this conversation really when Mary first started here.
I wasn't the one who brought it up. Wasn't it Seamus who brought it up?
Was it?
I'm just saying, it's pretty far-fetched.
Let's hold off on the rest and we'll come back after the fact. Tell us what's going on with this comedian. I also don't know if we can do this blurred out.
No, I think we can.
We can try.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
A female comedian named Natasha Leggero recently opened a comedy show by taking her top off and showing her bare breasts to the entire audience while people were recording and posting it on social media. Comedian Natasha Leggero turns comedy act into naked strip show caught on video. Once again, proving that feminism benefits men more than it benefits women, especially the free the nipple movement. I thought that we moved past this as a culture the same way that we moved past the gender wage gap debate.
That never went away. People lie about that. People still argue.
I still see a plethora of videos of feminist women in France who, at the drop of a hat, will take off their tops in order to protest different world atrocities. And we have no idea what they're protesting. It's just, their boobs are out. It's supposed to make a statement.
That reminds me of this video. Let's see if I can If I can find this here. This is like a comedy channel from a couple years back. I remember this still.
Oh, where are you going? To the women's rights rally downtown.
What are you guys upset about now?
Excuse me?
I mean, besides, being unfairly treated by this damn patriarchal society.
We're protesting for body equality. Specifically about the unjust double standard where guys can just go around topless, but if I do it...
It's about boobies?
Yes.
Are men allowed to take part in this march?
I mean, what are men so afraid about anyways? There's no flames coming out of my breasts. My nipples don't shoot bullets.
That would be pretty sick,
So
though.
why should we be subjected to a different standard? We're proud to be topless.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
No, seriously, I do. I mean, you're saying for the rawest then. I mean, nothing would make me happier than to free women of their tops and their bras.
Okay, then who is forcing us to wear tops in public, huh?
Honestly, I think it's you.
Oh, okay, sure.
I think I speak for all men when I say nothing would make us happier than if we went to the beach and there was just a bunch of topless, women there for equality.
Really?
Really?
For
I mean, not
equality?
just beaches, restaurants, gyms, parking garages. That lady down at the Dairy Queen, nothing would make me happier than rock hard nips and she gives my very cherry jet blizzard treat. And not for anything sexual. I mean, for freedom and whatnot.
That's very good, yeah.
For the most part, probably right.
I'm sure that men would say that, but then if it actually started happening, you would be seeing, obese women
There'd be plenty of women
and old women.
I don't want to look at without their shirts.
And Natasha Leggero is 51 years old, so this is just very undignified for a woman of her age to be doing. It's undignified no matter what, but really no one wants to see that shit. So let's take a look at the censored video caught by TMZ. She's doing this show with Bert Kreischer, and apparently Bert Kreischer is known for taking his shirt off during his sets, which I also don't see, because he's fat. Let's, risk it.
Here.
I think I want him to put his shirt on.
He gets the lip curves. He is that hilarious. Ladies and gentlemen, the Show.
I'm assuming it was an 18-plus show?
I certainly hope so, yeah. So her... why did she do this? Let's, psychoanalyze this for a second. What was the deep meaning behind this?
Because
For
you've been
taking her
raised to
shirt
believe
off.
that everything that's different between men and women is the result of some type of oppression.
This is the result of, social engineering, and men and women are actually not different at all. I'm not surprised that women don't think their boobs are sexual, because we all look at ourselves naked in the mirror every day, and obviously you don't look at yourself and see yourself as this sexual being, but when you're out in public and you're around people of the opposite sex, and even people of the same sex, we just, we've decided as a human civilization that is not appropriate for public places, and there are laws against that. So, men and women are different, and their bodies are different, and it is not socially acceptable for you to be shirtless in public. It's not socially acceptable for Bert Kreischer to be shirtless in public either.
That's the point that they don't make, is that when a dude does it too,
it's still weird and gross.
Makes people...
It still makes people uncomfortable equally. That went X-rated very quickly. So here was her Instagram caption. Bert Kreischer took his shirt off, so I did too. Improv said not to post, but TMZ already did, so F it. Should female comics be able to do the same things as male comics? Because I've also been thinking about trying to F my opener. Female comedians get a bad rap, and it's only getting worse thanks to people like Natasha Leggero, because you are leaning into the negative stereotype around female comedians that they rely on vulgarity crudeness and graphic sexuality instead of actual jokes. I mean, we talk about this a lot. Why aren't female stand-up comics as funny as men? It's probably because, men are socialized to need to be funny as a way to, make friends and appear confident and have status and attract women. And women don't have the same social pressure to be funny. They can rely on their appearance. They can, they have intrinsic value and they don't need to put on a performance to attract men. Men don't really care if women are funny.
Also, back when the trend of women being vulgar was funny, there was still some type of social expectation that women were not like that. So therefore, you're playing against stereotype. At the time, the idea of a woman being crude and making sexual jokes was unique because it was not something you saw all the time. Now, because that's the norm in society and not the exception, it doesn't hold the same hold that it might have for people back in the day.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like now all women are expected to be vulgar and act like men. So it's not really shocking when they do it anymore. You're not really breaking any new ground doing any of this. And I saw other female comedians who were celebrating her in her comment section. Sarah Silverman said queen. Margaret Cho said that it was iconic. And Chelsea Handler also was complimenting her. I just think if I were doing anything and Chelsea Handler were complimenting me for it, whatever I was doing, I would immediately stop doing it. Like, if Chelsea Handler is celebrating you, that's a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's like definitely a red flag. Rachel Brosnahan also commented and said, should female comics be able to do the same thing as male comics? Funny way to propose, but yes. And, it's not really about comedians. Just, there should be different standards for men and women.
There was a clip the other day of Jason Kelsey. He's at Travis Kelsey's
He was
game.
also shirtless.
He was shirtless.
Yeah.
He was holding up a young fan so that she could meet Taylor Swift. And I was just imagining the parents being like, I hope they know who that is. Otherwise, there's just a random guy.
Some random shirtless guy holding your child. Yeah. I would prefer if everyone kept their clothes on in public. That would be a good start. And then page 6 followed Natasha Leggero to her car the next night and asked her what she meant by this. Like, what was the statement she was trying to make? So let's take a look at that paparazzi video and her explanation. I'm sure it's really deep and not just that she was trying to be a vulgar pervert.
I wanted to ask you some questions. Oh, Natasha, talk to me. Everybody was shocked about your comedy show yesterday. Oh, Natasha. It's good publicity. People are shocked that you showed. Yes, and they're amazed. Do you think more comedians will do that in the future?
Absolutely not. No, nobody wants to do that. I was trying to make a point.
You're trying to make a point. What was your point?
That she's not feeling her husband.
That's her husband, by the way.
It's a bigger story, actually.
Oh, I did not know that.
Okay.
All right, anybody.
Can you imagine being this chick's husband, by the way? I mean, how would you feel if your wife was out there showing everybody her goods on stage, on social media? Another comment pointed out, by the way, if it wasn't an attention grab, you would have done this at Joe Rogan's comedy club where there are no phones allowed for it to leak. If you wanted this to get attention on social media, that's the reason that she did it. It's not really anything but clout chasing, but we're supposed to believe that it's this grandiose feminist statement about double standards and how female comics are oppressed because they can't be naked on stage.
It's been cooler if she's like, I just want to let my titties breathe.
Like, I don't know, just don't try to act like it was some kind of deep statement, Like, if you were just trying to get attention, I would respect it more if you admitted it, right?
There's a $20 one here from Disco Jensen. It says, female stand-up, my last date, my ex-boyfriend, my vagina.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally I wouldn't even call it a bit, but Amy Schumer did a bit in one of her specials where she said that her genitalia smells like a barnyard animal. Like,
that's gross.
that, and she repeated it like we're supposed to laugh the second time that she says it. Like, it's just so played out. And if you wanted to combat negative stereotypes about female comics, you would actually rely on telling jokes that make people laugh. Because currently the stereotype around female comedians is exactly this, is that you rely on being crass instead of being funny. It's not shocking anymore. It's 2024. Women have been acting like men for a solid 4 decades now. You're not doing anything revolutionary by taking your clothes off. Simple as. And people were also comparing this to the trans influencer who went topless on the White House lawn and had to apologize for it. And that was also called misogynistic.
The language in that is hilarious. Did you read the language around how they describe it? How the person...
The influencer's apology said, my trans masculine friends were showing off their top surgery scars and living in trans joy. And because it's perfectly within the law in Washington, D.C., I decided to join them and cover my nipples just to play it safe because I wanted to be fully free in myself. I had zero intention of trying to be vulgar or profane in any way. I was simply living in joy, living my truth, and existing in my body. You weren't existing in your body. You were getting naked on the White House lawn, bitch. It's so intellectually dishonest. Holy shit.
When I read that, I died inside.
I was just, living my trans joy and speaking my truth
that's an actual...
by bouncing my fake titties on my male skeleton in the White House lawn.
Yeah, it would have been better if she was just look, if she gave no explanation, I'd like that. If she's no explanation, I just did it. I'd been fine with that.
If you just said, I was trying to be profane and vulgar and get attention, I actually would have some respect for that. For them, it always has to be some kind of weird activism.
Yeah, activism sucks.
Yeah.
You should not be an activist. As I always say, it's not enough to just not be an activist. You should work very hard at being actively anti-activist.
It's funny.
You should do your best in society to do as little for a cause as possible.
The Free the Nipple movement kind of became popular at the same time as the free bleeding movement among feminists in the 2010s. So there's one that men were cheering on, and they were like, yeah, take your top off. And then they were like, but don't bleed menstrual blood on public transportation. That's not empowering.
$20 one here from Mike. He says, I bet the WNBA would get more views if they had them go topless, though. Yes, they absolutely would.
Unless it's Brittany Griner, that there's nothing really to see.
There's a comedian who made that joke. I don't remember who it was, about how they should. Maybe that was Ryan Long. They go topless to increase views.
Yeah. All right, let's move to Super Chats. Bucky Ducky said Star Wars isn't ruined. The films are still there. Yeah, that's the optimistic outlook, is, no matter how much the sequels and spin-offs are ruining it for you, you can always go back to the original, but... Tacti Platy said, I pronounce it Xennial to emphasize the Gen X. Okay, sorry about that. Joe Watland said, do you think that the people that invented money guns got rich off their invention, and do you think that they use money guns themselves?
It's a very good question. I would like to know that. Does the person who created the money gun live such a hedonistic lifestyle that he just has a bunch of hookers over all the time and strippers?
Why are you assuming his gender? What if the money gun was invented by a woman of color?
Well, the money gun is awesome, therefore it's probably invented by a dude.
Look it up. I actually want to know now.
It'd be really funny if it was who invented the money gun?
Corey Anderson said, in the movie Bruno, where Bruno and Paula Abdul are sitting on illegal immigrants like they're human furniture, there are men in Mary's DMs willing to be her human furniture. Yeah, that's kind of disturbing.
I'm just looking at this right now. It says, a gun that shoots money is the hottest thing on Kickstarter right now. I'm putting this on screen. This is from 2014. updated in May of 2023. Or of 2021, says the money gun. It's literally a gun that shoots money. These days, the line between real and hoax Kickstarters can seem far too thin. This campaign to manufacture money guns is real, though, but it's the video that looks dangerously close to a YouTube parody. Pay $250 or $5,000 for the gold-plated version for the opportunity to throw money at strangers.
There's no way that money guns were invented in 2014.
Rather than being satirical comment on crowdfunding, the money gun is actually marketed as a promotional tool for parties and events. Well, that's exactly what it's used for.
Wait, are you telling me that money guns never existed before 2014?
I don't know.
Like
I'm just reading the article.
So beforehand? Right. You had never heard of a money gun before 2014.
That was like a decade ago.
You don't even remember?
Like, I don't remember.
That's so hard to believe, but I guess...
Unfortunately, the thing most people probably want from a money gun Kickstarter is their own money gun, and the cheapest versions are $250 each. Well, that's not what these babies cost.
Yeah.
It's...
Ours are made of plastic, not gold.
Yes.
Crispy Like Transport LLC said her goal was met. She got the attention she was looking for. Not sure who that is referring to, but it could be referring to a lot of women we just talked about. Mikey said, oddly enough, the funniest female comedian I've watched is Asian. I know Tim was reposting a female comedian, said, like, I finally found a funny female comedian. She was Asian. I don't know. Pat the Plumber said, I'd never take my shirt off because I'm also Fat the Plumber. At least you're being honest with yourself, you know? Disco Jensen, Corey Anderson said, Bob's and Vagine, ha ha ha, so funny.
Yeah, that's the humor.
60 Watt said, leftists don't care about double standards that favor them. They will blatantly ignore any and all call-outs regardless of the legitimacy. Well, that's why it's, like, so pointless to point out, imagine if the roles were reversed and, like, how hypocritical they are, because they're just going to keep being hypocritical and we're going to keep being mad about it.
There's no truth but power. They don't care that they're hypocritical.
The Undertaker said, had a woman invented the money gun, we would know. She would have been hailed as a woman in tech and would have been on the cover of Popular Mechanics. Probably Forbes 30 Under 30.
I like the idea that back in the day, the trope of, like, the stripper who's stripping to go to law school, and there's actually a stripper who's going to be an engineer, and she created it while working at the strip club. That's a far better version of that, if I was to workshop my own story.
Bucky Ducky said, Mary, WTF were you doing to be seeing money guns at 14?
She said...
Well, I feel like I have a hard time believing that money guns didn't exist in the 2000s. Like, how's that possible? How had no one thought of this before?
It was a genius invention.
Well, I guess we have him to thank for it.
When was the shirt cannon invented? You know, the thing you shoot at the baseball games.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I've seen someone get, like, pelted with a t-shirt before. It looks violent. The rest of these aren't showing up for me
One
yet.
more from a username that you prefer not to say that says, Bert Kreischer is the reality of what Van Wilder looks like. Fat, alcoholic, slob, spent too long in college, desperately trying to cling to his youth. Thank you, guys.
I don't know much about Bert Kreischer. I think a lot of people seem to not like him.
In our chat, that seemed to be the general consensus. I've only ever seen him on, like, Rogan and stuff like that.
High Voltage 75 said, is there a money bazooka? If so, get them into PCC Studio now. That will make our cleanup job so much harder.
Like an M16 money gun. A Money 16 would be fantastic. I did see somebody earlier say put a red dot on it. Yeah. Put a red dot, like a holographic sight on your money gun and start just pelting people. Also, on Friday when John was here, he said, I think your money guns are losing some of their oomph, because when I was here they were like pelting me in the face. Now they just kind of make it a little bit over. We're gonna have to re-up and get new ones soon.
Yeah, gotta get new ones. Nothing Special said, hey there, Brett and Mary. Do you guys sometimes have guests on? A great collab would be with you guys and Amala and Taylor. Thoughts? Funny show, by the way.
Well, thank you. We do have guests on from outside the company on Fridays, and then on Wednesdays and Thursdays we have people who
regulars.
frequent. Thank you. Castle. Sometimes Libby comes in, but otherwise it's Phil and Sarah join. But yeah, we try to find a different guest for every Friday, and I think we're booked up through through February?
Part of March.
Part of March?
Yeah.
It's going to be a good year.
Taylor, you mean Taylor Silverman? Or is there a different Taylor?
Maybe that's who works with now. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I think she has like a co-host on her show. Maybe that's his name. Yeah. That would be cool.
Is Taylor a guy or is it a girl?
The guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Before we go, would you hit the like button on this video, and would you please subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already? Thank you very much for that. We're working our way to 100,000 subscribers, so please go ahead, join now, and be part of that. Thank you. Mary, where can we find you?
You can send me validation on Instagram at Mary Archived, or you can send me hate on X. That is also Mary Archived.
Perfect. All right, guys, if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twix at Brett Dasovic on both of those platforms. We are here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Doing Pacific, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, and Spotify. If you prefer to listen rather than watch. If you want to follow the show on social media, we are at Twix at PopCulture_show, Facebook and TikTok at Pop Culture Crisis, Instagram at Pop Culture Crisis Pod. One more here from Not That John Stewart. Says most money guns were probably homemade from repurposed card shufflers. This is probably when they started being mass produced. That makes sense. Bucky Ducky says, speaking of guests, where are that's a pride
Gamer maids? The gamer maids?
Is that what that is?
The rainbow
Oh,
flag and the mermaid emoji?
My monitor over here, so I can read the second one. It said it's a mermaid.
Well, we would love to have Sarah on. It's just we're kind of in a standoff right now.
Yeah.
Who's gonna come on whose show first?
And we got one more here from Pat the Plumber. Says M16 money guns shoot silver dollars. That would hurt.
Yeah.
That would hurt very much.
No thanks.
All right, guys. We will be back with another episode tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye. Related to content. So, Ted from Jason Helfstein of Oppenheimer, are you shifting the mix of your content spend to more licensed second run content? And if so, how should we think about this mix impacting Netflix's operating margins?
We've always had a healthy appetite for licensing content from others for our members.
They used to pay Disney a lot of money.
And, the current margin outlook contemplates a healthy mix between originals and licensed titles. It might be that we can deliver more on our programming spend with some licensed titles, but we also believe that we deliver an incredible amount of value, excitement, and differentiation with our original series. Remember our original series made up the number one most watched original 48 of 52 weeks last year. So we really don't have any plans to move away from those investments.
Right. And another question for you, Ted, from Rich on content. While Netflix data clearly shows that new original movies outperform licensed titles in terms of viewers and view hours, it doesn't appear that those new movies are having the same cultural impact that TV series have. Do the recent management departures or the willingness of Hollywood studios to license post-theatrical movies to Netflix signal any sort of meaningful shift in our film strategy towards licensing away from original production?
Our original movies are attracting some of the biggest audiences in the world. Look at Leave the World Behind in Q4. Look at all those crazy memes about the creepy deers that were all over the place when that movie came out. Or look at Society of the Snow from Spain right now. This morning was nominated for 2 Oscars. Or even look back last year. Jennifer Lopez's great movie, Mother. By some accounts, it was the most watched movie in the world last year. So I think about it that fans really don't care much about budgets and windows. They just want a movie that they love. They want a movie to make them cry or make them laugh or give them something great to talk about over dinner. As you point out, our original films do outperform those licensed films, and they do uniquely distinguish us from the competition. Just this morning, our original films got 18 Oscar nominations across 10 10 different films. So we do not plan to change our strategy or the mix. It's always going to be that kind of blend of first window, second window, and deep catalog. We think that formula works best to entertain.
But what about releasing them into theaters first? That would be good.
Right. And as a follow-up to that question around licensing, Ted, your competitors have largely abandoned their opposition to licensing catalog content to Netflix. We've seen, for example, NBC,
Not Disney.
HBO's Six Feet Under.
Not really.
Recently, a series of Disney TV titles on Netflix. Do you think your
Low rent, nobody watches them Disney title. Disney through Netflix, they're trash.
competitors should begin licensing their new original series as well, versus keeping them exclusively to their own streaming services?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd call you back to that history again and just say, we've got a rich history of helping break some of TV's biggest hits like Breaking Bad and Walking Dead, or even more recently with Schitt's Creek. Because of our recommendation and our reach, we can resurrect a show like Suits and turn it into a big pop culture moment, but also generate millions of hours of joy for our members. So I think we get to remember the studios have always been in the business of selling their content to others, including direct competitors, for years. I believe because, again, of our distribution heft and our recommendation system, that sometimes we can uniquely add more value to the studio's IP than they can. Not all the time, but sometimes it does, and we're the best buyer for it. So I am thrilled that the studios are more open to licensing again, and I'm thrilled to tell them that we are open for business.
Great. And a question on animation and animated features from Rich as well. For Ted, is Leo, Netflix's most successful animated film to date. It's been heavily watched based on our top 10 data. Is there any color you can provide on repeat viewing the film, and why has this animated feature film resonated versus other Netflix animated feature films?
I think Leo has resonated for the same reason that CB's did last year. It's great. People really love it. It brings a lot of joy to families. And yes, they do watch it over and over again, which drives a lot of engagement, but also drives a lot of attachment. I think that Leo and CB's are proof points that we have the flywheel to create original IP in that animated space. And there's so much appetite for animated feature. 7 of the top 10 most watched movies since Nielsen's been tracking streaming are animated features. So I'm super thrilled with Leo. We're kicking around Leo 2 right now, and it's a film that works on so many levels.
And they're not spending 200+ million like Disney is to make these.
Animation, the art of the animation is beautiful. The comedy is funny, and families just really love it. So we look forward to a lot more. We have Spellbound coming up next year. We're just really thrilled with that the animation team is now firing on all cylinders.
Moving along to engagement, this question is from Brian Kraft of Deutsche Bank, and I'll direct this one to Ted. What have the engagement trends been like globally and domestically? Has it been steady, increasing, or decreasing? And how has paid sharing impacted engagement per member?
Yeah, so we're really thrilled with our engagement trends domestically and globally. This is really a story about viewing moving from linear television to streaming. The story's been constant and it continues. It's also a story about Netflix kind of leading the way with professional film and television and now games. Our engagement is a bit impacted by our paid sharing. Think about it like fewer households using the same account. So as those folks spin off and get their own accounts and we win them over with our programming, that will normalize and continue to grow. We're really pleased with our engagement. We have shown you in graphic detail what that engagement looks like on a title by title basis in this engagement report we just released. And I think you see in that report, about 2 hours of daily engagement with our members, which is great. And you see that some of our hits and even our near hits are attracting enormous audiences. So we have to keep pleasing them, and we have to do that in multiple languages in multiple countries and all over the world. And that's what we're excited about, and it's showing up in that engagement.
Great. Let's move on to gaming. A couple questions on gaming. First from Justin Patterson at KeyBank for Greg. The gaming portfolio expanded significantly last year, and even added some more mainstream titles like Grand Theft Auto Trilogy. How are you thinking about sizing the investment in this area? How has engagement changed over the past year, and what are the signals you're evaluating to gauge when it's time to monetize?
Yeah, well, we're stoked by the performance of GTA. We had high hopes, but it exceeded even those high hopes. So it's a great place to be. So the biggest download and engagement numbers that we've seen so far, we were in the top mobile game downloads for several weeks, which was not only big for us, but big numbers for mobile gaming in general. And beyond any specific title, we've tripled game engagement over the last year. So that's a solid growth trajectory for us. Games, it's a huge opportunity, 140 billion in consumer spend ex China and Russia, and we believe we can build games as a strong component, another content category to deliver entertainment value to our subscribers. But to your question on size of investment, we thought about this as we've got to allocate enough to the initiative to ensure that we're playing to win, that we have enough activity in the space, that we're learning and growing, but also recognizing that we had a tremendous amount to learn and a tremendous set of institutional capabilities to develop. We wanted to make sure that we weren't growing that investment significantly before proving to ourselves that we can actually effectively translate that investment into member value. So things are going well. We continue to see this level of engagement growth, and we continue to see what we've been seeing so far, which is evidence, as we would expect, that engagement leads to business benefits like increased retention. Then we'll be able to scale that investment appropriately. Having said all of that, it's still, I'll use the early days words that we love to use, and it's worth noting that our games investment is a very small fraction of our overall content budget right now.
Great. Greg, second question. Gaming, Michael Pachter of Wedbush. He asked, given the outperformance of Grand Theft service, will you reconsider your focus on games available exclusively on as you to emulate the success of Grand Theft Auto by offering games like Candy Crush and Fortnite on Netflix as well?
Yes, licensing games, existing games, with often with some form of exclusivity. That's been a key part of our strategy. It's going to continue to be so. We've clearly seen one of the things that we've learned is that recognizing games that's either existing popular game titles or game franchises, or games that are based on well-known IP. In many cases, that's IP from our own film series. Those are the ones that are working the best for us right now. So we're going to continue to find the right opportunities to bring those kind of titles to members. We're going to look for more great licensing and licensing. So we can do more like what you've seen us do last quarter with GTA, but also other titles like Football Manager 2024, which performed very well for us. Money Heist for Cosmic Hotel, which was great. You'll see it this quarter with titles like Virgin River. So that's definitely the strategy that we're on, and you'll see us do more of that work.
Great. We have a question also from John Hullick of UBS. This one I'll point to Greg, but Sven, you can feel free to join in as well. The question is, how should we think about pricing changes in the rest of the world now that you are through the majority of the password sharing implementation and in light of the recent price adjustments in the US, UK, and France?
Yeah, as we had talked about previously, we largely put price increases on hold while we were rolling out the paid sharing work because we saw that as a form of substitute price increase. Now that we're through that, we're able to resume our standard approach towards price increases. You've seen us do that in the US, UK, and France. Those changes went well, better than we forecasted. And we'll continue to then monitor other countries and try and assess, when we've delivered enough additional entertainment value, we look at engagement, retention, acquisition signals there, so that we can go back to members and ask them to pay a bit more to keep that positive flywheel going, and we can invest in more great film series and games for those members. So, the summary statement might be back to business as usual. And Spence, I don't know if you wanted to add anything there.
I think you nailed it. You're on a roll, so it's good.
Great. I'll move this along now to a couple questions on competition and the competitive landscape. The first question comes from Maria Rips of Canaccord Genuity. With ads coming to Prime Video at the end of this month, given Amazon is making it the default option for its Prime members. Could you talk about how you are positioning Netflix relative to the competition when you're speaking with advertisers? Could you also comment on if Netflix considered making the default option similar to Amazon? And what were some of the puts and takes about that decision? So I'll turn that one over to you, Greg.
I like that question.
We did consider making it the default option, but given our long history of not having ads, we thought it was better for our members rather than force them into a change and give them ads, but better to attract them to the ads plan for the ones that wanted it based on the benefits, more streams, higher resolution downloads, and of course, the lower price to be able to access all these incredible stories. So, I mentioned the growth numbers we were seeing previously and the rate of growth we're on. So I think that approach is generally working well for our members. We haven't seen any big backlash as a result, which is positive as well. And then in terms of competitive positioning, probably the most important thing to start with is, the market's big, right? We talked about over 25 billion in CTV ad spend alone. So there's room for multiple players, clearly. And when we think about how we compete for some of that ad spend, I really think we need to play to our strengths. We've got the incredibly engaged audience, the most engaged audience who are watching the most culture-defining films, series, and live events. That is an important place for brands to be, and it's something that differentiates us from our competitors. So that's the space that we're going to play in.
Super. Another question on competition. This one probably best for Ted and Spence to take. It comes from Eric Sheridan from Goldman Sachs. How does the current competitive landscape and content impact the trajectory of Netflix's own content spending in 2024 and beyond? Is it possible that the company could widen its competitive moat on the same or lower absolute amount of content spend?
I think it's always been a competitive place for the top programming. So I think that'll continue, and that's really what I think we were talking about. When top titles come to market, when the big packages come, and everyone's duking it out for them, it's going to remain to be pretty competitive. I think that we're reinvesting at a very healthy rate. We see that in the engagement, we see that in the retention, we see that in the subscriber growth. So I don't think this would be the time to try to test that. I don't know anything differently, but
yeah, I would just say, just to reinforce that, we've seen the benefits over time of continuous improvement, great execution and focus, and kind of gradually building our business and doing it really well and thrilling our members. And so you see it we are increasing our content spend, and coming out of the strikes in 23, we're trying to get back up to as much as 17 billion of cash content spend this year. And as we've also said over the last few years, as we kind of re-accelerate our revenue growth, which we're seeing in the business, we hope to sustain that healthy revenue growth, grow profit and profit margins over time, and then reinvest a good portion of that back in the business, which means increasing our content spend. So we do plan to do that. We want to do it in a smart, judicious, responsible way. That, obviously, today's even announcement with WWE is a case in point. We believe we have room to do that while still staying very disciplined in terms of our overall content spend and our business performance.
I think the perception of over-serving thrilling content to our members has served us pretty well. So.
And we've got lots of room to grow, obviously, and so we just want to do it in a disciplined question.
Another question from Eric Sheridan from Goldman Sachs. A bigger picture question. Given the scale of audience that has been built by Netflix, how do you think about the potential new areas to widen your exposure to verticals, formats of media consumption? Maybe Eric is referring to short form content or UGC, things like that.
I would kind of call back to something that Greg alluded to earlier. In the areas of business that aren't in our core, movies, television, and now games, that business we're capturing about 5% of consumer spending. In our most mature markets, we're getting about 10% of TV time. So in our very core business, we still have an enormous room to grow. So when I look at that, it doesn't make me think about searching for more inorganic growth in different kinds of programming. There's so much room to grow in this programming that we're kind of hopefully getting better and better at for our members every day. So there's a lot of adjacent businesses that are not necessarily competitive, that are certainly complementary in some ways. Some of those platforms that you're talking about, maybe in the user-generated space, that turned out to be great marketing tools for our professional content. So So I think we're right
Like you do.
focused, I think, on the core of professional storytelling.
Great. I'm going to move us over to a few questions around capital allocation. The first is from Brian Pitts of BMO Capital Markets. Basically, the question for Spence is, can you help us frame your M&A views over the next 12 months? Is there a possibility for mobile gaming, acqui-hire, or what other sorts of M&A activity would Netflix be interested in?
Thanks, Brian. We're not gonna speculate on kind of potential M&A activity, but as you know, our historical bias is to build and not buy. We try to be very responsible in terms of our capital allocation philosophy. We hold a modest amount of debt. We're currently holding 10 to 15 billion of gross debt. Fully fund our business and new initiatives. You see that in terms of our investment into ads, into live, into games, while still growing the business. And we'll look at selective accelerators to that organic growth. We have done that, but we're not interested in some of the big linear assets that may or may not be available. We also noted that in the letter. So I think that's how you should kind of think about our what's out there to go after.
And staying with you,
We don't want to buy TV companies.
Spence, another question on capital allocation. This one coming from Alan Gould of Loop Capital. We know your general goal is having cash to long term. How big of a factor is the current stock price and buyback activity? Some of your debt begins maturing in the next few years. What do you believe is the optimal leverage ratio to maximize shareholder value?
Yeah, sure. So I'm glad you asked, because I missed the last piece of our capital allocation philosophy, which is to hold about 2 months of revenue in the form of cash on the balance sheet, and then to return the excess cash to shareholders over time. We've done that in the form of buyback. And so, with a little over kind of $7 billion of cash on the balance sheet in a year, and with, as you say, the kind of our expectation for strong cash flow build in the year, roughly $6 billion is what we're projecting at current FX rates for 2024. You can expect that we'll continue to return excess cash to shareholders through buyback. We don't try to time the kind of stock price, so we really are kind of more in more of a price averaging sort of approach, in that we buy back over time as we have excess cash. And then in terms of optimal leverage ratio, we are fortunate to have continued to strengthen our balance sheet. We had a recent upgrade from Moody's in Q4. We continue to grow into that investment grade balance sheet, but we're pretty intentionally under leveraged. Frankly, we think that the optimal, without getting overly specific, we think essentially, as I said, our capital allocation strategy has served us well, and that philosophy served us well over the past handful of years. And we think that flexibility in the balance sheet also serves us well to adapt to a quite dynamic industry.
Great. I think we'll wrap up with one final question. It's actually one question we've gotten from several different analysts, and in the spirit of WWE, probably a good one for Ted and Greg to tag team on. The question is, what are your key 2024 priorities? Maybe Greg, first to you.
Sure. I think you've heard us express this multiple times this call, but we see so much potential and so much opportunity ahead of us in our core business. We got hundreds of millions of qualified households out there that are still yet to sign up for Netflix. I can't believe it, but they're there, and we've got to win them over. There's many hours, like billions of hours of TV time that we are not currently winning. Growing along those two dimensions, more household and more moments in truth, we call them, more entertainment value delivered, is the key priority for us. We want to improve our entertainment offering. To do that, that means delivering more stories that our members love, films, series, games, now live events. That's the key to that success. And then on top of that, we're focusing on improving how we translate all that additional entertainment value into revenue and improved operating margin. That means growing our ads business. It means growing, general plans and pricing optimization. That's the major area of work there. So that's what we're going to be focused on for 2024, and we're super excited to do it. So with that, I'm going to tag team to my partner, co-CEO. We'll do that instead of a sleeper home. Look, I think everything you said is 100% Greg, and I think it all is built on the foundation of movies and TV series and games that people love, can't live without, talk about, can't wait to get back to, post about, that drives the conversation, that drives this love for programming and entertainment. So we're going to start with that with next week, Griselda, a brand new show from the makers of Narcos, starring Sofia Vergara. That's insane. It's so good. Following the success of One Piece, we've got a brand new Avatar, The Last Airbender, coming for fans. We've got The Three Body Problem, based on one of the top-selling science fiction books of all time, from the creators of Game of Thrones. We have a new show from the UK, from Guy Ritchie, called The Gentleman. That's insanely fun. And we're back with returning seasons of Bridgerton, of Emily in Paris, of Diplomat, of Squid Game. And on top of that, great movies like the second part of Rebel Moon coming up, Damsel with Millie Bobby Brown, Jennifer Lopez's new film.
I know. No Rebel Moon
drove everybody
jokes.
crazy at Sundance last night. And Eddie Murphy and Beverly Hills Cop 4, Axel Foley, and so much more. It's so fun, and this is a never-ending mission to continue to improve this for our members and make sure that we're bringing them all the joy that we can. I want to thank all the teams at Netflix who have made that possible in 2023 and will in 2024. So I'm very excited, and I'll throw it back to you, Spencer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ted. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Spence, for answering the questions from analysts. I also want to thank our audience for tuning in to our first ever live streamed video format. We look forward to your feedback, and in the spirit of continuous improvement at Netflix on everything, we look forward to getting better at this over time. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next quarter.
All right, stay tuned, folks. We are going to have a discussion now that it's over, and you jumped in here before I could give you my intro. Fresh off the taco truck, here's Mexican Iron Man.
Hi. Although today it's delicious sushi.
Oh, there we go. They're serving sushi on the taco truck now?
Well, times are tight over here in Hilton Head. I haven't had good Mexican food out here since I moved here. Holy hell, what an earnings call! I'll just wait till you want me to comment, but
You can comment right now. I'm gonna pull some of the actual reports. Stick around, folks.
All right. Well, you're pulling the reports. Let me tell you what stood out to me. I heard the whole thing. I was in the car driving, and I heard the whole thing from beginning to end. I'm sorry it was late. And had a health problem. I had to get him to the vet.
Is he okay?
He's okay. He was coughing up blood, but everything's okay. I guess something happened. He got into something and ate something he shouldn't have. But all the tests, blood works good. Blood, temperature, he's fine. So X-rays are good. So it looks like he's gonna make it, and we're gonna be able to get on this plane here. But I was scared early this morning. But anyway, getting back to business here. All right. Shout to everybody in the chat. Hi, everybody. Here's what stood out to me.
Wait. Here's what stood out to me, Mike. 3, 2, 1, boom!
Oh, baby. Hell, full disclosure, I do own Netflix stock, but I don't own as much Netflix stock as I do Disney stock. Sadly. Wow, look at that.
Now, again, we're reminded for those of you, we don't do financial advice. None of that here. We cover the entertainment industry because we like to see, this is what we do. This is our channel. We comment on the entertainment industry. We follow the business workings of the entertainment industry as a hobby. But damn it, you can't get out of the business side of this. And we're just showing you, this is what is right now.
Wow.
This is the reaction.
Wow.
To Netflix. Now, when the earnings call started, we were at plus 6.9, plus 7 after hours. We're now blown past 8. Wonder what happens tomorrow when the market opens for everybody else.
Mexican Iron Man made money for the first time on the Valiant Renegade earnings call live. I made money on one of my stocks. Praise Jesus! Praise Jesus! Oh Lord! Lord, praise Jesus!
So for those of you who may be new, because I know sometimes we do these earnings calls, we get a lot of new faces in here. I've worked in the financial industry for 20 years, and Mike is a CPA, for many years. So we're coming at this from a lot of professional experience, professional backgrounds. Although again, there's no advice being given here. We're just simply commenting on what we heard, our personal thoughts.
Here's what stood out to me. This is what I heard. Let me throw out 3 or 4 things that were monumentous to me. Number 1, I love the fact that their verbiage and their entire business model is around average revenue per member. They didn't say user.
ARM is what they call it.
They didn't say customer. They didn't say subscriber. They didn't say user. They didn't, none of that stuff. Member. That is subtle, but very important because they regard what they have similar to like YouTube. Like they regard the people who sign up for the service as members of a market economy, and that is huge. Number two, did you hear them use the word discipline with spending? Even when they talked about the wrestling deal, they're like, hey, they basically said, look, we know we just committed to spend $1 billion, right?
I think $5
billion, right? But we are disciplined and we know that we're going to make enough money that is okay because we're still going to get our revenue back up to $17 billion of spending. Why? Because we have discipline. When's the last time I heard the word discipline on a Disney earnings call?
They're very disciplined with their DEI.
Right. And third of all, the third thing that stuck out to me was that, look, for those of you watching this show right now on the Valiant Renegade channel, those of you that have watched Valiant's last live stream, when he did another one, when we've done, say, Disney's or Warner, let's be specifically with Disney, all right? I do that member chat up earlier for a reason. When questions were answered, here's what we got this time with these guys. We found out why they did what they did, the benefits of why they did that, what they're doing now, what they're going to do, and why it's going to deliver whatever results. The way they answered questions was clear, concise, and accurate. That's why the stocks were performing in a way, because we've never gotten that on any Disney call. Let's just talk about something basic. Something basic is this. It is shocking to me that this company, Netflix, just made Disney Plus look like a ghetto service and Bob Iger like a ghetto CEO. From this, the brilliance of using YouTube, the audio was clear. How many times Valiant are you trying to maximize the audio when Bob's talking? Or when the call-ins come? I love the fact that they collected all the questions and they delivered them as they came in an email in advance. I think this was a professionally produced, versus what we usually get at Disney is Bob Iger reading a stupid cut and paste out of the SEC disclosure for the quarterly earnings call. Let me tell you this. For those of you who don't know a lot about finance or don't watch a lot of these, like me and Brian have been watching these for literally 20 years. Literally. Okay? Over and over again, various companies, 20 years. Some are Zoom, some are whatever. What we just watched is the equivalent in baseball terms. Bob Iger and Disney Plus, basically from a streaming perspective, just got their ass kicked like my Oakland A's do in the baseball season. And these guys came out here and slammed and hit some home runs and just went home with the World Series trophy. It's like in football, comparing this Netflix team and the way they handle this earnings call against what we get from Disney. Let me be blunt. It is literally like watching a football game of the score of 42-7, maybe even 42-3. Valiant, you disagree with anything I just said?
No, and look, there's no set criteria for what an earnings call has to look or sound like, right? They just have filing requirements with the SEC. And when they do earnings calls, most companies have a scripted portion and they go to a Q&A. Netflix, they've never really, that's not kind of their thing. They've done videos up to this point, but I think this was the first time. It was definitely the first time that they've done this live. Everything before now has been like they would drop the video at 4 Central or 5 Eastern on YouTube, and we'd watch it like as soon as it would drop, be on a live stream and we'd play it, and then we'd just go through it.
Right.
This was actually live. There was no scripted portion. They spent 45 minutes reading questions and delivering answers to all the analysts. Whereas usually you get Disney, you get about 30 to 40 minutes of scripted and maybe 20 to 30 minutes, if you're really lucky, of Q&A.
I want the Disney shareholders.
I don't feel like I was getting BS. Like when I listen to a Disney earnings call, there's a very distinctive amount of just BS. And it's because they're having to skate over so many bad issues that Disney's had. But I want to pull up exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not just, saying this to say it. I'm going to show you guys here what I mean with the Netflix earnings before I do that real quick, let me grab some of these because we had a few others come in. Of course, we got Mike's. Thank you, Mike, for sending in the member chat. Bass player chimed in again for $5. I wish they would give their films a wide theatrical release. I was hoping there'd be a question on that. That would give their films more staying power. I agree. They can't put everything into theaters, but Netflix, Ted, Greg, if you guys catch this at all, if you're listening, or you hear about this, please consider doing more theatrical releases. Be selective, but maybe take 3 or 4 of your big films each and every year. And drop them into theaters, not on a little limited release, like, oh, we're going to put it in California and New York for the frou-frous out there, and put it out there for a couple of weeks so we can get Oscar nominations. That's great. I'm glad you're doing it. But when you have things like Extraction with Chris Hemsworth or Extraction 2, for the love of God and all that is holy, please drop these things into theaters. I think you will be blown away by what happens. And it's going to help you recover your costs. It's going to make them bigger events. It's going to eventize these types of films onto Netflix. I would highly urge you to consider this going forward. I really, really would. Again, be selective because you guys put out a lot of fresh content and new movies, but think about the big action blockbusters, or something along those lines. I think it would be great for Netflix. I'd really love to see this. And especially in a year like 2024, when there's probably going to be a dearth of content hitting theaters this year because of the strikes, if you guys have more stuff ready to go, call up Adam Aaron. Call up Adam Aaron, the CEO of AMC. Look at what we just did with Taylor Swift and all this stuff, man. He's making deals, guys. He's making deals. And Bass Player, again, for $20, if they want to succeed in gaming, they need to bring that service to PCs and consoles. Apple tried pushing full-feature mobile gaming for years. It's never been truly successful. There are just too many cons. I agree with you on the surface about that. And you're right. It's not like Apple Arcade has ever been anything big, right? It's like, oh, you have an Apple TV, some kids will play with this. I think Netflix, and I have not fiddled with Netflix gaming personally, so I really don't know. But obviously, they're getting things like GTA exclusively, packages, mobile gaming, and things like this, dialing it in for phones. Netflix, I don't think, wants to compete. They're not trying to make their own AAA gaming, from what I understand. They're trying to do simple stuff and create a tie-in to the mobile app on your iPhone. It's like, oh, you watch Netflix, you're in the demographic that will probably enjoy Netflix mobile gaming. Go in, download a separate mobile gaming app from Netflix, and you have this library you can mobile game. That's what they're looking for. They're trying to get into that part of the market. I don't think Netflix wants to compete with Sony PlayStation 5 or Xbox 374S, whatever the hell they're. I'm not an Xbox guy. I'm a PlayStation guy. I don't think they want to compete in that space. That's not what they're going for. Apple, I honestly, I don't know who they're trying to compete to be on the gaming side. At least not in proprietary like Apple Arcade. But anyways, so much for that. So let me pull up, and thank you, Bass Player, for all that stuff. Let me pull this up. So this is kind of what we're talking about. And Mike, you might have missed the first part of the program. Before the call, I was talking about this is what Nelson Peltz was on CNBC jumping up and down about. Disney wanted to get in the streaming space. Disney's total revenues, I think, for fiscal year 23 was around, 88 billion, 89 billion. Netflix's total revenues for the entire fiscal year we now have, of course, I guess let me switch this out, Mike, because you might have missed. If I can get this to play. Hang on one second. Let me flip up the other graphic real quick, and then we're going to get back to that one because my screen is goofing right now. But the point is that they did even better than a lot of people expected them to do. Better than I thought they were going to do. In terms of how the fourth quarter peeled out. All right, got it. Let me pull this back up. I had to switch this. I moved it to the other monitor. All right, so here we go. So I had said before on live streams that if you looked at all the way through the end of the third quarter for Netflix, which is also the third calendar quarter, September 30th, okay, they had raked in up to that point. And this line here, let me scroll over so you can see it, Mike. So we've got this line here. We're using, come on, operating income right here. All right. So if we go over here on operating income, they had, as of the third quarter, they had about as much operating income through the first 9 months of 23 as they did for all of 22. They were only $200 million less up to that point than all of 22. Look at the operating income now, $6.95 billion compared to $5.6 billion last year. And Mike, are you still muted?
Sorry about that. Go.
Oh, there you are. No, it's okay. This is what I was showing folks. Mike, check this out. Total revenues for 22, $31.6 billion. Total revenues for 23, now with the fourth quarter in, $33.7 billion. They added roughly $2 billion of revenue. Look at the growth in the operating income. They went from 5.6 to 6.9. They only added $2 billion more in total revenues, but the operating income went up $1.3 billion.
That basically means it's pure profit.
Yeah.
I mean, not completely, but it basically means that for every 30 cents they're spending in content, for every dollar for every 30 cents they're spending in content, they're getting 70% in profit. And by the way, it's not gross; it's net because it's dropping to the bottom line.
Yeah, that's what it's ridiculous. Wow. $2 billion in new revenues, and 1.3 billion of that came down to operating income. And I mean, even if we go down here to, and I'll scroll over again because they add all these extra years. I didn't get a chance to take them out. If we scroll down after we take out interest expense, and we go down to net income here, this line right here, and we scroll over again, we see 5.1 billion in 21, 4.4 billion in 22, 5.4 billion in 23. Again, they went up in net income. Even after they take out the other stuff, we're still $1 billion ahead with only $2 billion more in new revenues. So, I mean, it's not only the fact that Netflix is increasing their revenues year over year, their profit margins are exploding. I mean, they're really cranking it out. And this is why they're like, well, $5 billion for the WWE for 10 years? Yeah, sure. Let's get it to life. Let's do it. And they're still committed to around $17 billion in content spend. So, I mean, this is a win. This is a big win for them. And I think they're very good. This is why they're excited. And they've barely scratched the surface at this point with ad revenue. Right. Barely scratched the surface at this point. So if we go back over and we look at, this is the actual investor report instead of just the Excel spreadsheet that they offer to everybody, which I like. It's just here. You know, it's like it's not 37 pages of stuff you got to go dig for. Their report is literally just, here's the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. And that's what I pulled up. That's from Netflix. But here's the more formal fancy pants report, okay? So let me expand this a little bit if I can. Here we go. So here's the thing. They just ended their first year with Ted and Greg. Those are the two guys you saw talking on the report. Ted Sarantis is co-CEOs. And here we are. They've accelerated their growth, exiting the year. I like, well, with 12% revenue growth up from 6 in 22. Fiscal 23 operating margin went up to 21% from 18 in 22, ahead of the 20% target. FCF, free cash flow, up to just about $7 billion for 2023. Disney would be so happy. And then we look at, they talk about what they want to do going forward. This is the basis of it. Look at the Q1 forecast for 24. This is where we are now. This is January 1st to March 31st. If you look at Q1,
Christ.
Yeah, they're about to jump over 9.2 billion. Is what they're forecasting for the quarter. And look at the net income again. The net income for Q4. Net income for Q3.
Do you know how ballsy it is for them to basically say that our diluted earnings?
I was about to say. It's going to get EPS.
You know how bald. Okay, ladies and gentlemen watching at home. Basically, this is the equivalent of the NBA saying, "Hey, you know the last game where I scored 60 points. Well, guess what? The next game I'm going to drop 120. No problem."
Yes. No problem. It's silly.
And I might do more.
Yeah. And that's because they're expecting to see a very accelerated growth from what it seems in the advertising revenue. And you heard them talk about, hey, look, when you did this crackdown on password protected sharing and all this, forcing, people that were signing into a Netflix account that was mostly watched in Louisiana, but one of the users is always in Texas. Okay, that kind of thing. And they were asked about, why were you not trying to drive those customers to the ad base here? Why were you trying to drive them initially towards the premium side with no ads? And the answer was, well, look, Netflix is what it is. People are used to no ads here. We would love to see more people sign up for ads, but we wanted to offer them what they're used to first. And if they don't want to sign up for that, we're happy to have them on the ad-based tier. We'd like to encourage them to go that way, but, blah, blah, blah. But they're still expecting a lot of growth in ads. And we've seen articles recently, how many, veteran ad executives from DAS, from Disney ad sales, are being pilfered right now by Amazon Prime and Netflix. For whatever reason, they don't want to stay at Disney anymore. I don't know. Figure that one out. But I think that's a lot of the growth. Look at the global paid memberships. They added about 13 million this past quarter in new Netflix subs or members. 260 million is where they are now. They keep growing. Disney is losing subs right and left. Granted, they're primarily from India, but nobody's growing like this right now. And you look at, just everything for Netflix is going in the right direction in terms of the financials. It really is. So, I mean, I don't know what else to say about this. They're winning, and this is the bellwether. This is the index, quote unquote, right? That Disney and every other streamer is being held to. How are you doing compared to Netflix? I mean, if Disney's total revenue is $88 to $90 billion, and most of their revenue is coming in from theme parks, linear broadcasts, they've got streaming in there with live sports, they've got cruise ships, they've got theatrical television, so on and so forth. Netflix in this next year, I mean, you look at it, it could well break $40 billion in revenue in this fiscal year, in 24. They're basically going to be bringing in almost half the amount of revenue the Walt Disney Company is with nothing but streaming. And this is what Nelson Peltz is pissed off about with Disney. It's like, you've got all this stuff. Why aren't you worth more than you are? Why does the market say you're $90 a share? Why does the market say that your market cap is $170 billion? And Netflix, with this after hours trading, is now going to be at 220, 230, 240 billion tomorrow morning. And they're nothing but streaming. Nothing but streaming. Imagine if the value and power of Netflix was actually going on at Disney Plus. You'd have a $400 billion capital market cap company in Disney right now. Ain't there? Because they're not doing it. Mike?
What I find shocking is that the amount of money that they make for all of their activities in the quarter coming up is going to be what Disney burns through in losses.
You're not wrong.
No, I mean, if you take that chart you just put up, Valiant, and you literally flip it around, you flip it around, it's like the story is backwards at Disney. At Disney, whatever they got coming in is a lower number than what Netflix has, which is, they wouldn't even, here's the thing, we can't even get reliable numbers from Disney at all. We can't get it. It's all wrapped up in this and that, and we don't know how much of the money that Netflix attributes to Disney Plus is from money in one pocket shifting over to be counted and reported in the other pocket. But it's still in those pair of jeans of Disney.
Yeah.
And so when I look at this, it really stands out to me that we've got a company like Netflix that doesn't have the ability to siphon cash out of, say, Disney Park, doesn't have the ability to siphon cash out of Disney rentals.
That's it.
Doesn't have the cash to be able to suck cash out of people from merchandise and licensing agreements. Netflix doesn't have revenues upon revenues from merchandise and licensing that are just streaming in just for you. Well, Bob Iger plans out 1, 2, or 3 showers a day. No. Netflix actually has to run a damn business. And that's what these two guys are. They're running a freaking business. This call, and I got it, as someone who owns stock in Netflix, someone who owns a stock in Disney, I am literally floored by what I heard and saw today. I literally think that Bob Iger is literally, it's like worse than that. He's a Pop Warner football coach telling everybody he's playing an NFL game. And he has no business even coaching the Pop Warner football team, let alone try to play in the NFL. This was a thorough ass whooping today. And let me tell you that if so help me God, the Disney stock goes up after the next earnings call. And when it goes right back down again, which it always does, they do these 1 or 2 little cheeseball announcements. Bob says a few things that placates these institutional investors and these family offices. The stock goes up a little bit, and what happens? It levels out again, and what happens? Morons like me get a 33-cent dividend maybe twice a year.
Yeah, and for, let me give you all something else to think about. Check this out, because I always look to see what happens.
$40 a share in one day after hours trading. The market hasn't even opened. Oh my God.
Yeah, tomorrow morning. Let's see what it does. Can't wait. Now, and again, if the broad market is if some horrible news comes out tomorrow morning and the broad market is down, it's going to pull that down. But if the market is just average, this thing should do pretty well tomorrow. Theoretically, no advice given. I always like to look at what the other players in the same space are doing, just to see what kind of, because everybody looks at it and goes, I think of like AMD and NVIDIA or Broadcom or Micron or some of these other like chip manufacturers. If NVIDIA has a really good call or a really good day, you see some of that bleed over to AMD. You see some of that bleed over to Intel sometimes. You see it bleed over to Micron and Broadcom and other guys that play in the same microchip or AI space. So, okay, it's up 8% after hours, right? Okay, check this out. Let's look at, Amazon again. Amazon's not, they stream, but not really. They're still overwhelmingly a retailer. But look at Roku. Roku's fairly, a pure streaming play here, obviously. Roku's up 2.84% today, and it's up 1.28 after hours. Now, one could possibly assume that a lot of that pull after hours has to do with what just happened with Netflix. They feel like, hey, if stuff for Netflix in the streaming space is going really well, then there's going to be some upward momentum, rising tide lifts all boats kind of attitude out there for other companies. Apparently not so much for Disney.
Son of a biatch.
It's just sitting there, just waving at you.
Hi, Bob. Hey,
Yeah.
Bob.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't think this is the problem. I mean, Disney is so far away from profitability still on streaming, and obviously they're going to hope for more revenue from Hulu to come in to soften the burden. This is the difference. Netflix is not going, oh my God, we're going to have to cut spending on production. We're going to have to cut all of these new shows. We're going to have to eliminate this and that. They're still spending